Hello, people. Look at this. Customer brought me this single action revolver. And when he purchased it, it was registered under the name Great Western. Now, I don't believe that's what this is. This looks like a genuine Colt to me. And when we look at these markings, this looks like a classic patent marking that you would find on a Colt. Of course, to the right of this, you would typically see the Colt logo, the company logo, which is a rampant, horse in a circle, or the letters U.S. to signify that it was purchased by, the U.S. government for service use. But we don't see that here. It's been removed, unfortunately. But that happens after 100 years, after taking on a lot of use or abuse, however you want to look at that. When guns get refinished, sometimes the markings get removed. If this is a Colt, it would have a caliber right here, and we don't see any caliber marking. But this gun has certainly been refinished at least once. And this trigger guard being nickel or chromed is not original as well, but they certainly did the rest of the gun a great service by not refinishing the frame, the cylinder, and the barrel. Because chroming firearms, chroming handguns that weren't meant to be chromed originally usually doesn't end well unless it's done professionally, and this work doesn't look like it was done professionally, unfortunately. So what really tells me that this is a Colt is this VP marking in a triangle. That's a very common Colt proof marking found on revolvers of the time. And at the rear of the trigger guard, we see a number 1. Serial number on this one is 336373. And we see that same number on the frame, the trigger guard, and the bottom of the grip, which is fabulous for a collector. Because a collector really wants to see all matching numbers. However, when we open the gate, we see 333. Now, regardless of how many threes are in this serial number, they're not matching. The last three, so that would be the last 3 of the serial number. And the last 3 here is 373. So it's close, but it's not correct. Now when we look at the ejector tube, it's hanging off the barrel, but it's sturdy. So somebody locked it down somehow while retaining this enormous gap between the barrel and the tube, but it seems to function properly. And then the cylinder has this really bad gouge put there by the bolt, of course. The bolt is what locks the cylinder, and there's a timing issue with that bolt. Oh God, look at that hammer. Not only is the hammer missing the firing pin would be a separate part that's pinned to the hammer, and to remove that you need to drive that pin out and then tap through the rear of that hole. And we can do that to get what's left of the firing pin out, but I don't know that it's worth it. This hammer has been, the shape of the hammer has been modified dramatically. It'll probably end up cracking right here if used a lot. Now, when we look into the frame, We have clear access to the barrel in the rifling, and that's not right. Let's take the cylinder out and get a better look at that. So to take the cylinder out on these revolvers, of course, you have to push in on this part and then pull the rod out. Open up the gate and then cock it just enough so that the bolt releases from the cylinder, and then you can remove the cylinder. It doesn't seem to be in bad shape. It's just this heavy gouge. No markings, no serial number. This doesn't seem to be a military contracted pistol. This looks like a commercially contracted handgun. But there's also something weird going on here with the hammer. Let's take the grips off. These grips are not original either. These are modern plastic staghorn grips that are cracked and worn. Yeah, now look at the angle or the shape of the hammer spring. This could be just not the original spring, or it could be that the end of the spring up here broke. But either way, when we cock the hammer, we see how the spring bottoms out on the frame. That is not supposed to be happening. You want the hammer spring to arc up a lot farther. So that makes me think that this is either not the original spring, or it broke and they just reshaped it to accommodate its existing length. You know, the longer I look at this gun, the more I think it was made to not be fireable. Like they took a working gun and they made it not working intentionally. Oh heavens, look at that breech face. We're missing the recoil plate. Yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with this gun. Would you restore this to original condition? I don't know that I would. I don't know if it's worth it. It just depends on how much you really want to put into it. You know, the markings are going to be really hard to restore to original without the original dies. And the marking on the frame here and the caliber marking is really the only thing that seems to be missing. The markings, the serial number markings and the proof markings are in decent shape. So to just be functioning, really, what I would do is replace the hammer spring, the hammer, with a complete firing pin. And of course the recoil plate. All those things would certainly be necessary for it to function better. I would also investigate why the tube here is hanging so far off the barrel. It seems to be rock solid. And then maybe get some better grips for it. The nickel finish is tolerable. You know, it's probably worth restoring. Again, I think it's just a matter of how much you really want to put into it. I am certainly no expert with single action revolvers. If you know more, please put it in the comments below. If I'm wrong or right, please tell us about it. And tell us, what would you do? Would you restore it, or would you just leave it like it is and accept the current condition and use it just as a conversation piece? Because it is that. It's a really, really interesting conversation piece. And in its current condition, I have to assume it's worth something. Thanks for watching, people.